about to close in California. In just seconds, we're going to get our very first look at whether Californians will accept Governor Gavin Newsom's new U.S. House maps. And we can make a projection in California. The polls are closed as of now. And CNN projects that Californians have indeed voted yes on the state's newly drawn congressional district map, aiming to help Democrats win an additional up to 5 U.S. House seats in the 2026 midterm elections in 1 year. This victory marking a huge win for California Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat who framed this vote as a chance for his state to rebuke President Trump and to make it easier to deny him a Republican-controlled House for his final 2 years in office. Again, CNN projecting that Californians have voted yes on Prop 50 to implement the state's newly drawn U.S. House map. And CNN's anchor Alex Michelson is at the headquarters for California Democrats in Sacramento. Alex, this is a pretty quick call. The polls closed, and we said Prop 50 is going to win.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very quick call. It doesn't get any quicker than this, Jake. And what a big moment for the history of Governor Gavin Newsom. He bet big on this one. Imagine if he lost this race, how problematic that would be for him and for his future. He took a big bet, and he's winning big on this, sending a message not only here in California, but to the rest of the country. He has thought for years that the Democratic Party is too weak and that the party is looking for somebody who will be stronger, not only in what they say, but in what they do. And essentially with this, he is getting points on the board for the Democratic Party in changing the congressional map at a time when a lot of people in the Democratic base have felt bewildered and have felt like nobody has been fighting for them. This, as a move for Governor Newsom, is not only helpful for him here, but as he's now finally saying he's interested in potentially running for president. This has expanded his donor base around the country. It's increased his popularity in polls. It's increased his social media following in a big way. And it also may change and may inspire other governors in other states to move on the issue of redistricting. But this is probably the biggest night in the political life of Governor Newsom. We expect to hear from him behind me sometime soon.
All right, and we will bring that to our viewers when it happens. We are also still standing by to hear from Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani, who we have projected will be the next mayor of New York. New York, the city so nice, they named it twice. And Dana Bash, we should note, so the Prop 50 victory in California tonight, this not only has repercussions for 2026, and the odds that Democrats will recapture the House have just increased. Mm-hmm. This also has serious repercussions for 2028 because Governor Newsom wants to be president too.
Yeah, and this, I mean, the fact that it's 3 minutes after the hour when polls close and it's just not even close.
So technically we called it 1 second after the hour.
Oh, okay.
So you know.
Okay, so maybe it was closer than we thought. No, I'm kidding. Look, this whole, as Alex just said, this was a gamble by Gavin Newsom. I mean, he saw what was happening in Texas. He felt the outrage among Democrats, and he seized on it. And it wasn't even close.
And people opposed him at the beginning. Democrats opposed him at the beginning.
Big time, because if you look at what the recent history in California has been, is that an independent commission to decide the districts has been increasingly popular. And he said, no, this is not about that. He says it's going to be temporary, we'll see, and that's technically what the ballot measure says. But it's not about that. It's about not letting Trump get away with this. He made it about Trump. It is about Trump. And just like in every other race across these elections, it was 100% about Trump. And when it's in a state like California, where the Republican Party is weak at best, it was just a blowout.
And you can more easily spin things that are close. But we were able to project California the second the polls closed because the exit polling is just overwhelming. In New Jersey, the Democratic candidate for governor is winning by double digits. Right? The Democrat won it by only 3 points 4 years ago. Donald Trump narrowed it to 6 points in the presidential election. So Donald Trump made it closer. Republicans said, look at all this progress we're making. Nope. Mickey Sherrill wins by 13 points. In Virginia, Donald Trump narrowed it to 6 points. Republicans said, look at all the progress we're making. We're making Virginia purple again. We're taking it back to red. It has a Republican governor today, and the Democratic candidate is winning by double digits. In your home state, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, 3 Democratic state Supreme Court justices up. Last time I looked, they were all staying in their seats with a 60% plus margin.
And the governor, Josh Shapiro, had made a big issue about that.
And so in Georgia, they're winning these 2 Public Service Commission seats that they haven't held in 2 decades. So you're seeing big margins across the country. What does that tell you? That tells you voters are mad. The same cost of living and other anger at the establishment, anger at government that got Donald Trump reelected still exists. And he's in charge now, and they control both chambers. One quick thought. Number one, Trump's at 37%. David Chalian just mentioned the House math. At 37%, history tells you the other party will win at least 24 seats in the House. Now, sometimes we defy history, but that's the average. So tinkering with redistricting here and redistricting there, no matter what the final number is, may not be enough if it's that high. That's a projection for what happens a year from now. My big question is, what happens tomorrow? Yeah. What happens tomorrow? How do these vulnerable House members, Republicans, whether you live in New York in the suburbs, and you saw what just happened in New Jersey. New Jersey's a big suburban experiment, right? If you are a Republican who represents a battleground suburban district, you're looking at Virginia and New Jersey, and you're saying, forgive me, holy shit. So do you come to work tomorrow and say, we need to end the shutdown, Mr. President? And if Donald Trump says no, do you find Democrats to do that with? Do enough Republicans stand up and say, Mr. President, we need to do things differently?
I've been hearing from some Republicans that may be what we start to hear tomorrow, that they are much more ready to work with Democrats to try to end the shutdown. But, Jake, to go back to California and Gavin Newsom, one of the things that Democrats are demanding, that voters are demanding, is that their leaders fight Donald Trump and that their leaders fight for them. And the thing that Gavin Newsom did here was he changed. Dana made the point about this independent commission, right? Democrats have been defending rules and norms that Americans are saying are not working for them, right? They have been running on that. And Gavin Newsom said, you know what? If those Republicans in Texas are going to throw out the rules and throw out the norms, I'm going to do it too. And voters responded to that. And you're seeing also J.B. Pritzker in Illinois do it in his own way with the ICE raids that are happening in Chicago. I mean, there is a shadow presidential primary already unfolding. And a lot of it is about how can you both fight Trump, but also fight on the issues like affordability that we're talking about tonight.
One quick point on this that you just triggered in my head. You have Newsom, you have Pritzker, you have Shapiro in Pennsylvania. Now you have 2 new women Democratic governors in New Jersey. Democratic governors, there's going to be a lot of focus. Republicans are going to try to make it all about Mayor Mamdani, mayor-elect tonight, but Mayor Mamdani, and let them try. Midterm elections are about the president. Midterm elections are about 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and how the country feels. But I do think Democrats have made a lot of progress in governor's races over the last several years. And you have a new class. When Bill Clinton brought the Democratic Party back, there was an interesting class of governors, both Democrat and Republican, around the country. You used to actually talk to each other about policy in a bipartisan way. Those days are over. But I do think, yes, we're going to focus a lot on Mamdani. Does that work in New York? There's a very interesting group of Democratic governors from all different parts of the country that I think have a chance to lead the party out of the wilderness, or at least try. And I think your point, they're all going to be on the road helping midterm candidates next year. And so welcome to the auditions.
So speaking of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, let's go there now. CNN's Caitlin Collins is there. And Caitlin, President Trump has been saying that Prop 50 is unconstitutional. What's his response tonight?
Yeah, Jake, and that also kind of folds into what we just heard from the president a few moments ago. He's basically putting out a to-do list for Republicans here in Washington in light of tonight's election results. And part of that includes where he says overall to achieve what he is about to tell them to do, Jake, is that they need to get rid of the filibuster. That has been a new call of his in the last couple of days, something that he has not only said publicly on Truth Social, as he's done now twice in the last hour, Jake, it is something I've also been told that he has been making private phone calls and conversations to Republicans about, and he is telling them tonight, get rid of the filibuster, despite the fact that we have not seen a lot of appetite, almost no appetite at all for that on Capitol Hill. I was just talking to Senator Markwayne Mullin last night, who said he did not think that was the right move at this time. But the president just said that he wants Republicans to pass voter reform, which he says that includes voter ID, no mail-in ballots, and he also says to save the Supreme Court from being packed, and no 2-state additions, saying to terminate the filibuster. And Jake, that does come after what you mentioned there, where the president had said about this redistricting effort in California that it is not only unconstitutional, he said the entire way that people were going and voting today and using mail-in voting, he argued was rigged and said it was under serious criminal review. Now, I understand we've asked both White House officials, them privately, for an explanation or any evidence to back up the president's claims. They did not offer any, and we saw a lot of pushback from local officials in California as well, saying that their voting process there is not rigged. But the president has made very clear how he feels about what just happened in California tonight.
All right, Caitlin, thanks very much. Probably hear more about this from the White House in the days ahead. As we wait for Zohran Mamdani, I mean, it's 11:10 here. Likely he will come out and speak very shortly. What do you expect his message to be? I mean, obviously nothing different than what he's been saying on the campaign trail.
Look, I mean, he's got time to think about it. I think he's going to do, an extraordinary job. He's an incredibly compelling communicator. I think about the split in this party in this town. I talked to a young Muslim woman. I talked to a young Jewish woman. They said very different things. The young Muslim woman said, when I was a kid, 9/11 happened. Somebody pushed my uncle in front of a train on the subway. We fled New York as Muslims. We fled this town. To come back and see a young Muslim be elected mayor is incredible to me. And so for the first time, she feels welcome and safe in New York. I talked to a young Jewish woman. She had the opposite story. She said she always felt that New York City was a safe place for Jewish people. But she says between the right wing, Tucker Carlson's going anti-Jewish, and some of the things she's heard from Mamdani's people, she feels like the horseshoe is starting to squeeze her out, and she doesn't feel safe here. And so you have two young women who are going to be looking at this speech tonight. And I think both of them deserve a speech that will honor their hopes and their fears and will bring them together and lift them up. That's his big responsibility, because you do have people in the Jewish community who have noticed he didn't say anything about the hostages when they came home. They've noticed he hasn't denounced Hamas forthrightly. They've noticed that he hasn't denounced the globalizing intifada thing efficiently. And they are not happy. Some of those people in that community, they're very afraid tonight. So he is a transcendent figure for some, and he's on trial for others. Tonight, he's got a chance to bring them all together.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think one of the challenges generally, he has unique challenges and unique opportunities because of the way he's presented himself to the city and the positive way he's given people hope that something better is possible. And not just something better in terms of affordability, but something better in the kind of politics they see. But for the Democratic Party generally, the question is, how do you build something that speaks to our common humanity and not to our individual identity, concerns, and interests? And I think he has the capacity to do that. He's very gifted. You wouldn't go from 2% to mayor of New York as a 34-year-old if you didn't have great gifts. But part of that gift was being welcoming and opening. And one of the things I noticed tonight, I heard Mikey Sherrill say, I know everyone didn't vote for me, but I'm here to fight for every single one of you. And this country, and I think from coast to coast, people are tired of being sliced and diced and divided and inflamed, not just by their politicians, not just by their president, but by social media. And I think candidates who push against that are going to do pretty well in the next few years.
But I do think Van hits a very important point. I talked to a lot of voters ahead of this election, Jewish voters in New York City, the largest Jewish population in the country, that were fearful of him becoming mayor. And I think, in fact, there were a lot of votes for Cuomo that were simply votes against Mamdani, and I think he has to address that. I don't think he's been forthright enough. I think it's his duty in representing the greatest city on earth. And listen, there's a lot of takeaways you could have from tonight, but I think you saw two women in historic races in both Virginia and in New Jersey who rose to the occasion, who united and said that there are going to be people they're going to represent everyone, not just the coalition that they built. So I think that's important. I'd also say this. He's very talented. I've gotten to sit down with him. He's somebody who's an incredibly articulate person. He's got a bright future. But I'd also pump the brakes a bit on saying he's the next Barack Obama or something. He was not running against somebody who ran a competent campaign. He had Curtis Lewa in the silly hat, and he had Cuomo, who ran one of the worst campaigns I've seen. People were pleading with
Scott
Cuomo
says
to
he's
do
the
better.
leader of the Democratic Party.
So I think before we declare him, well, Republicans will, and it's good, it's smart politics
Can
to
any
do
of
it.
you name
This is
somebody else?
Gavin.
Come on.
No, okay.
Listen, he is the greatest.
We'll
Listen, I'm
have
gonna
that
compliment-
discussion in the next.
I'm going to compliment your guy. He's the greatest actor you have. He turned himself into a hood ornament for the poor and the downtrodden. He's a rich kid. who is a great actor.
Kinda like Trump.
He play acts.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I
play
can
acts.
understand why.
And
you
so
would, I
I-
can
I'm
understand
just
why
saying.
you'd be leery of an actor in politics.
I'm just saying, there's no other obvious Democrat. He has all the energy behind him. You talk about slicing and dicing the electorate. He's going to slice it and dice it in one way: oppressors and oppressed.
No.
And I want to find out if he has it in him to give it up. I don't think he does, because that's the energy in the Democratic Party. It's oppressors and oppressed.
No.
That's why the Jews in this city feel scared, because they know he has labeled them as the oppressors.
Well,
That's why people who create jobs in New York City are leery, because he labels them the oppressors. That is the worldview of the energy of this campaign, and it's also the
That's not
worldview of
the-
the energy of Democratic primaries across this country.
First of all, as a Jew from New York, I appreciate your solicitude, and I know that I mean, I have friends and folks I'm close to, and I just was speaking to a rabbi in this town this morning. I understand those concerns. I think he does need to address that. But I will tell you, I went over to his headquarters, and after he got elected, I was invited over to meet him. And the thing that impressed me as much as him, and he was impressive, was the young people in that headquarters who believed that they were doing something, not lifting a person, but doing something to bring about solutions to problems that weren't being addressed, that they thought they were exercising their agency in our democracy to do what, frankly, the status quo hadn't done, which is to address what is a growing problem around affordability. So, I mean, I understand the politics of it, and I understand.
You don't think they had
No,
any other
I understand the politics of at a night when the Republican Party has taken such a drubbing to sort of reach out for
the
the
blue
worst
states have
possible
spoken.
caricature.
The blue states have spoken.
But if that's the way you describe his campaign, then you haven't.
It's the way
you
he
haven't
describes
been-
his campaign acts. This is not me. That's the way he describes it.
That's not what. Then why do these exit polls reflect something completely
Listen,
different?
I know you don't want it to be. I know you don't want it
From
to be,
Louisville,
but it
Kentucky,
is.
you saw those exit. You saw the
But
campaign.
again, we're
with
talking
such-
about blue of blue New York City. I think you could take much better lessons from Virginia and New Jersey if you're talking
Every
about the
area
midterms
of
and
this
what to
country
project
is different.
ahead.
My point at the beginning of this conversation was there are commonalities that bind us together.
I want to say something
Yeah.
about that. On the California side, why are people standing in these long lines to register this protest vote? It's not so much, I'm a California Democrat, it's not so much about the gerrymandering, that sort of stuff. These ICE raids have been so shocking and so vicious and so unfair. They're not going after the gang members and the people they said they were going to go after. Working people, roofers, electricians, plumbers, nannies are getting thrown on the ground in front of their friends and families, drug away, people screaming, yelling. People are, my ex-wife actually works in the school system. People are afraid to send their kids to school. And so there's something that's happening where I don't think the Republicans understand that they have identified some of the right issues, whether it's crime or immigration, but the way this administration is conducting itself is creating a massive backlash. And that's why you see these long lines. It's not just about gerrymandering. It's about
also-
people saying, we don't want these mass people here throwing women on the ground in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest to this because I am a native New Yorker. I've lived in Chicago for a long time, and I live there now. And what's going on there now is horrific.
Not being
and like, you want to get violent people out of the city, sign me up, but don't harass children and.
And here is the mayor-elect of New York City, Zohran Mamdani, coming out on the stage. Let's listen into the crowd and to his speech.
Thank you, my friends. The sun may have set over our city this evening, but as Eugene Debs once said, I can see the dawn of a better day for humanity. For as long as we can remember, The working people of New York have been told by the wealthy and the well-connected that power does not belong in their hands. Fingers bruised from lifting boxes on the warehouse floor, palms calloused from delivery bike handlebars, knuckles scarred with kitchen burns. These are not hands that have been allowed to hold power. And yet, over the last 12 months, you have dared to reach for something greater. Tonight, against all odds, we have grasped it. The future is in our hands. My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty. I wish Andrew Cuomo only the best in private life. But let tonight be the final time I utter his name as we turn the page on a politics that abandons the many and answers only to the few. New York, tonight you have delivered a mandate for change, a mandate for a new kind of politics, a mandate for a city we can afford, and a mandate for a government that delivers exactly that. On January 1st, I will be sworn in as the mayor of New York City. And that is because of you. So before I say anything else, I must say this. Thank you. Thank you to the next generation of New Yorkers who refused to accept that the promise of a better future was a relic of the past. You showed that when politics speaks to you without condescension, we can usher in a new era of leadership. We will fight for you because we are you. Or as we say on Steinway, ana minkum wa ilaykum. Thank you to those so often forgotten by the politics of our city who made this movement their own. I speak of Yemeni bodega owners and Mexican abuelas, Senegalese taxi drivers and Uzbek nurses, Trinidadian line cooks and Ethiopian aunties. Yes, aunties. To every New Yorker in Kensington and Midwood and Hunts Point, know this. This city is your city, and this democracy is yours too. This campaign is about people like Wesley, an $11.99 organizer I met outside of Elmhurst Hospital on Thursday night. A New Yorker who lives elsewhere, who commutes 2 hours each way from Pennsylvania because rent is too expensive in this city. It's about people like the woman I met on the BX33 years ago, who said to me, I used to love New York, but now it's just where I live. And it's about people like Richard, the taxi driver I went on a 15-day hunger strike with outside of City Hall, who still has to drive his cab 7 days a week. My brother, we are in City Hall now. This victory is for all of them, and it's for all of you. The more than 100,000 volunteers who built this campaign into an unstoppable force. Because of you, we will make this city one that working people can love and live in again. With every door knocked, every petition signature earned, and every hard-earned conversation, you eroded the cynicism that has come to define our politics. Now, I know that I have asked for much from you over this last year. Time and again, you have answered my calls. But I have one final request. New York City, breathe this moment in. We have held our breath for longer than we know. We have held it in anticipation of defeat. Held it because the air has been knocked out of our lungs too many times to count. Held it because we cannot afford to exhale. Thanks to all of those who sacrificed so much, we are breathing in the air of a city that has been reborn. To my campaign team, who believed when no one else did, and who took an electoral project and turned it into so much more, I will never be able to express the depth of my gratitude. You can sleep now. To my parents, Mama and Baba, you have made me into the man I am today. I am so proud to be your son. And to my incredible wife, Rama, Hayati, there is no one I would rather have by my side in this moment and in every moment. To every New Yorker, whether you voted for me, for one of my opponents, or felt too disappointed by politics to vote at all, thank you for the opportunity to prove myself worthy of your trust. I will wake each morning with a singular purpose: to make this city better for you than it was the day before. There are many who thought this day would never come, who feared that we would be condemned only to a future of less, with every election consigning us simply to more of the same. And there are others who see politics today as too cruel for the flame of hope to still burn. New York, we have answered those fears. Tonight, we have spoken in a clear voice. Hope is alive. Hope is a decision that tens of thousands of New Yorkers made day after day, volunteer shift after volunteer shift, despite attack ad after attack ad. More than 1 million of us stood in our churches, in gymnasiums, in community centers, as we filled in the ledger of democracy. And while we cast our ballots alone, we chose hope together. Hope over tyranny. Hope over big money and small ideas. Hope over despair. We won because New Yorkers allowed themselves to hope that the impossible could be made possible. And we won because we insisted that no longer would politics be something that is done to us. Now it is something that we do. Standing before you, I think of the words of Jawaharlal Nehru. A moment comes but rarely in history when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends and when the soul of a nation long suppressed finds utterance. Tonight we have stepped out from the old into the new. So let us speak now with clarity and conviction that cannot be misunderstood about what this new age will deliver and for whom. This will be an age where New Yorkers expect from their leaders a bold vision of what we will achieve, rather than a list of excuses for what we are too timid to attempt. Central to that vision will be the most ambitious agenda to tackle the cost of living crisis that this city has seen since the days of Fiorello LaGuardia. An agenda that will freeze the rents for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants. Make buses fast and free. And deliver universal child care across our city. Years from now, may our only regret be that this day took so long to come. This new age will be one of relentless improvement. We will hire thousands more teachers. We will cut waste from a bloated bureaucracy. We will work tirelessly to make lights shine again in the hallways of NYCHA developments where they have long flickered. Safety and justice will go hand in hand as we work with police officers to reduce crime and create a department of community safety that tackles the mental health crisis and homelessness crises head on. Excellence will become the expectation across government, not the exception. In this new age we make for ourselves, we will refuse to allow those who traffic in division and hate to pit us against one another. In this moment of political darkness, New York will be the light. Here, we believe in standing up for those we love. Whether you are an immigrant, a member of the trans community, one of the many black women that Donald Trump has fired from a federal job, a single mom still waiting for the cost of groceries to go down, or anyone else with their back against the wall, your struggle is ours too. And we will build a city hall that stands steadfast alongside Jewish New Yorkers and does not waver in the fight against the scourge of anti-Semitism. Where the more than 1 million Muslims know that they belong. Not just in the 5 boroughs of this city, but in the halls of power. No more will New York be a city where you can traffic in Islamophobia and win an election. This new age will be defined by a competence and a compassion that have too long been placed at odds with one another. We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about. For years, those in City Hall have only helped those who can help them. But on January 1st, we will usher in a city government that helps everyone. Now, I know that many have heard our message only through the prism of misinformation. Tens of millions of dollars have been spent to redefine reality and to convince our neighbors that this new age is something that should frighten them. As has so often occurred, The billionaire class has sought to convince those making $30 an hour that their enemies are those earning $20 an hour. They want the people to fight amongst ourselves so that we remain distracted from the work of remaking a long broken system. We refuse to let them dictate the rules of the game anymore. They can play by the same rules as the rest of us. Together, we will usher in a generation of change. And if we embrace this brave new course, rather than fleeing from it, we can respond to oligarchy and authoritarianism with the strength it fears, not the appeasement it craves. After all, if anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So, Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up. We will hold bad landlords to account because the Donald Trumps of our city have grown far too comfortable taking advantage of their tenants. We will put an end to the culture of corruption that has allowed billionaires like Trump to evade taxation and exploit tax breaks. We will stand alongside unions and expand labor protections because we know, just as Donald Trump does, that when working people have ironclad rights, the bosses who seek to extort them become very small indeed. New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant. So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us. When we enter City Hall in 58 days, expectations will be high. We will meet them. A great New Yorker once said that while you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. If that must be true, let the prose we write still rhyme, and let us build a shining city for all. And we must chart a new path, as bold as the one we have already traveled. After all, the conventional wisdom would tell you that I am far from the perfect candidate. I am young, despite my best efforts to grow older. I am Muslim. I am a democratic socialist. And most damning of all, I refuse to apologize for any of this. And yet, if tonight teaches us anything, it is that convention has held us back. We have bowed at the altar of caution, and we have paid a mighty price. Too many working people cannot recognize themselves in our party. And too many among us have turned to the right for answers to why they've been left behind. We will leave mediocrity in our past. No longer will we have to open a history book for proof that Democrats can dare to be great. Our greatness will be anything but abstract. It will be felt by every rent-stabilized tenant who wakes up on the first of every month, knowing the amount they're going to pay hasn't soared since the month before. It will be felt by each grandparent who can afford to stay in the home they have worked for, and whose grandchildren live nearby because the cost of childcare didn't send them to Long Island. It will be felt by the single mother who is safe on her commute and whose bus runs fast enough that she doesn't have to rush school drop-off to make it to work on time. And it will be felt when New Yorkers open their newspapers in the morning and read headlines of success, not scandal. Most of all, it will be felt by each New Yorker when the city they love finally loves them back. Together, New York, we're going to freeze the... Together, New York, we're going to make buses fast and... Together, New York, we're going to deliver universal... Let the words we've spoken together, the dreams we've dreamt together, become the agenda we deliver together. New York, this power, it's yours. This city belongs to you. Thank you.
Zohran Mamdani, next mayor of New York City. And John, what you make of that?
Well, look, I've got divided reactions from my friends to this speech. First of all, you got to give the guy the credit. He defeated Democratic Party royalty, the Cuomo. That's a royal family in our party. Defeated them. Defeated the oligarchs and rich folks who jumped in to try to stop him, and then defeated Donald Trump. So the triumphalism that you see there is earned. A year ago, nobody ever heard of the guy. And the younger people who I'm hearing from feel a great deal of relief and pride, and they're fired up, and they feel they've been silenced for too long. So that speech appealed to some. But I think he missed an opportunity. I think the Mamdani that we saw on the campaign trail, who was a lot more calm, who was a lot warmer, who was a lot more embracing, was not present in that speech. And I think that Mamdani is the one you need to hear from tonight. There are a lot of people trying to figure out, can I get on this train with him or not? Is he going to include me? Is he going to be more of a class warrior, even in office? I think he missed a chance tonight to open up and bring more people into the tent. I think his tone was sharp. I think he was using the microphone in a way that he was almost yelling. And that's not the Mamdani that we've seen on TikTok and the great interviews and stuff like that. So I felt like there's a little bit of a character switch here where the warm, open, embracing guy that's close to working people was not on stage tonight, and there was some other voice on stage. That said, he's very young, and he just pulled off something that's very, very difficult. And I wouldn't write him off, but I think he missed an opportunity to open himself up tonight, and I think that will probably cost him going forward.
Scott?
Oh, are you saying he wasn't the unifying voice of a generation that you predicted mere moments ago? Axe, where was the man that you predicted would not slice and dice the... Look, guys, he started his speech by quoting Eugene Debs, who ran for president of the United States. 5 times as the Socialist Party of America candidate. He repeatedly attacked people in
Google,
this. No, I know my socialists. I keep a close eye on them.
Yeah,
I work here. So here's the thing. He went after everybody that he thinks is a problem. People who own things, people who have businesses. He said an interesting quote, "No problem too large for government to solve."
Or too small, important.
And so when you think of the world that way, that every problem, no matter how small or how large, is something for government to do, let me just decipher this for you. Tax increases as far as the eye can see, which means the people who need to provide jobs to the young people that you say need jobs are going to flee as quickly as they possibly can. I think this was a divisive speech, and he clearly sees the world in terms of the people who are oppressing you and the oppressed, and he said the oppressed are now in City Hall.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I said this was very much for his opening marquee speech a wholesale defense of socialism. And oftentimes people run as democratic socialists, but try to talk a little more about economic populism. Democrats have needed their version of like the left-wing Donald Trump, who could talk about affordability but back it by their policies. This was, I mean, he was just rattling through the points that we'd expect while in the economic capital of the world, New York City. But he also did a remarkable job of setting the highest possible expectations for himself. This is a very young, untested gentleman. He was a state assemblyman. He's 34 years old. He wants to run an economy the size of Japan or South Korea here in New York City. And he's basically saying the most grandiose expectations of what he's going to do, ignoring that he has to work with Albany, he has to work with the state assembly to get the bulk of it done.
By the way, we are anticipating Governor Gavin Newsom from California in a minute. So
Can I add one thing, by the way, as the politics? And you've done this, so I'd love your opinion.
I'd love to give it.
This guy did not sound like a mayor. He put every old guard national Democrat on notice. This man sounded like a national candidate. Half the speech was talking to Donald Trump.
Listen, I agree with everything that Van said about that speech. I was disappointed by it because this was his big introduction to the city as the new mayor, and I think he could have, if he had approached it the way he did so much of his communications, this was a shouted speech, not a talk with the city on the night of his election, ushering in a new era. But let me say that, and I was happy to hear him with a full-throated denunciation of anti-Semitism. I was happy to hear him talk about working side by side with the police to reduce crime and violence. But the one thing that I will say that I'm happy about is to hear Scott Jennings talk about how he is repulsed by divisive speech. and I think that everyone should note this, and I think you should carry it forward and use that index to judge all of our leaders.
I'm repulsed by socialist speech, is what I am repulsed by.
So you can be as divisive as you want.
But you gotta admit, by spending the back half of the speech screaming into the camera at Donald Trump, that is the mark of someone who has national ambitions.
I think you're trying to be a telepath here. But let me just speak.
I was before he spoke.
I can't speak for the Mamdani supporters. I want to speak up for. Notice for them, though. Notice that the joy and the excitement in that room. I think that people have felt unheard and unseen.
Yeah.
Especially some of the younger people. And when he's talking about the people with the bruised hands and the burned hands, and then being able to reach for something greater. He's speaking to something very deep in people because the sense that the American dream is now out of reach and that working people don't matter and that they can just be automated away, AI'd away, gigged away. He's speaking to a real, the tone was a little bit off, but the substance of your dreams matter, I think that matters.
You know, for all you said, Alyssa, the fact is everyone here is going to go home to great comfort tonight. Everyone at this table is going to go home to great comfort tonight. There are a lot of people in this city, there are a lot of people in this country who have to worry every single day about how they're going to meet their bills. And that is a crisis for the city and a crisis for the country. So the fact that he is addressing those things is an important thing. Did he address it in the way I would have No.
To be honest with you, it felt Trumpian. He started by saying he dare not say the name of Cuomo again, saying he's not even going to say his name again. Juxtapose that to Abigail Spanberger, who took a moment to acknowledge Winsome Sears' service and to thank her for running a good race. There was a moment to rise to the occasion. He did not choose.
Let's go back to Jake in D.C. Jake.
All right, thanks so much, guys. So taking that in, that was quite a stem winder of a speech from Mayor-elect Mamdani, where he was really, I think Van Jones' analysis was interesting, talking about how it wasn't the smiley uniter necessarily, but more of a firebrand.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost as if he was listening to Casey Hunt talking about the point that you made right before he spoke about the fact that maybe the bookends or the geographical bookends with him in New York City and Gavin Newsom in California, the push among the Democratic base, members of the Democratic base, for their leaders to stop following the rules. The rules would dictate the guy who just won the most important city in America, maybe even globally, that he would say, I'm going to unite, let's reach out to everybody. He did in some ways, but he also was incredibly defiant in his defense of democratic socialism.
He's incredibly smart to have done what he just did. So he clearly made a choice to speak to his base, to his supporters. That was a "we told you so." You all told us we couldn't do this, and we did. And I'm proud to be a socialist in this. And to Scott's point, quoting Debs, who ran for that was a I am
Nehru,
I am who I am.
Too.
Yeah, I am who I am, and I'm not backing down.
Yeah.
So it was a defiant speech and a proud speech, and a little bit of an in-your-face speech to the people, whether they're Democrats or Trump, anyone who opposed him. The bigger challenge is, how does he set these? He's an aspirational guy.
Yeah.
When I was in New York, the young people think, whoa, do they think he's going to do everything? No, but he set a high bar, and he himself said he was setting high expectations. How does he deliver? The New York City mayor does not have a ton of power when it comes to generating all the revenue he's going to need to pay for what he wants to do. So he's going to ask the Democratic governor and the Democratic Assembly to raise taxes as they head into their next election cycle.
Right.
Good luck.
Right.
And so how does it look? We'll watch this. He decided to do what he did tonight. I don't disagree with anything that was said. He made a conscious decision, I think, to be defiant and to be bold and to be ambitious. The challenge is going to come is what happens 6 months from now and a year from now as he actually tries to govern. Can he accomplish these things? And then what happens if he can't? Does he become a pragmatist? Does he make compromises? Does he explain that? Or does he continue to say, I want it all?
And this really underscores the choice that is facing the Democratic Party going forward. I mean, they had a great night tonight across the board. All types of their candidates did really well. But it doesn't mean that this tension between the guy who goes on that stage, defiant, quotes Eugene V. Debs right out of the gate, which, let's be real, he's a rookie candidate, right? He's a young guy. He's new to this. He made a decision that that's what he's going to say out of the gate, right? A moment like this one that he had tonight, this is the biggest moment that he has had yet on the national stage, and it is absolutely a choice to lead with that. And the Democrats are going to have to decide what version they want.
So here is Governor Gavin Newsom, another successful
Well, good evening,
Democrat
everybody.
this evening.
And let me underscore, it's been a good evening for everybody, not just the Democratic Party. But what a night for the Democratic Party. A party that is in its ascendancy. A party that's on its toes, no longer on its heels. From coast to coast, sea to shining sea. But it was not just a victory tonight for the Democratic Party. It was a victory for the United States of America, for the people of this country and the principles that our founding fathers lived and died for. And so we're proud. We're proud here in California to be part of this narrative this evening. We're proud of the work that the people of the state of California did tonight to send a powerful message to an historic president. Donald Trump is an historic president. He is the most historically unpopular president in modern history. In every critical category, Donald Trump is underwater. He promised to make us healthier. He promised to make us wealthier. We're sicker and poorer. And he fundamentally understands that. Why else would he call Greg Abbott saying he's entitled to 5 seats? Why else is he trying to rig the midterm elections before one single vote is even cast? He understands his position at this moment in the United States of America. One thing he never counted on, though, was the state of California. Instead of agonizing over the state of our nation, we organized in an unprecedented way in a 90-day sprint. People from all over the United States of America contributed their voices and their support for this initiative. We stood tall and we stood firm in response to Donald Trump's recklessness. And tonight, after poking the bear, this bear roared with an unprecedented turnout in a special election with an extraordinary result. None of us, however, are naive. This is a pattern. This is a practice. Donald Trump's efforts to rig the midterm election continue to this day, and I'll reinforce that in just a moment. You're seeing him take action all across this country, not just in Texas. You saw what they were successfully able to do in Missouri, what they did in North Carolina, what they're trying to do in Indiana, and inevitably in Florida. They are not screwing around. In June of this year, we saw 4,000 National Guard federalized in the state of California. We saw 700 active duty Marines not sent overseas, but sent to the second largest city in the United States of America to militarize our streets. We said in June this was a preview of things to come. What more evidence do you need than what happened in Washington, D.C., what's happening up in Portland, cities like Chicago? When we kicked off this campaign just 90 or so days ago in Little Tokyo, in Southern California, in LA, at the Democracy Center, Donald Trump sent Greg Bovino. He sent his private police force that increasingly appears to have taken an oath of office to Donald Trump, not to the Constitution of the United States. He sent them to our kickoff rally to chill free expression, to chill free speech, to intimidate people from participating. Just today, in Los Angeles, Donald Trump called up the Border Patrol, sent them to Dodger Stadium, and threw a fastball at free speech, right at the head, free expression, to suppress the vote in America's second largest city. Just did that today. People in tactical gears sent out to intimidate a community that is already on edge. But you see, as we speak, people are still in line. People waiting up 3 hours to cast their vote, to send a message to Donald Trump. No crowns, no thrones, no kings. That's what this victory represents. It's a victory for the people of the state of California and the United States of America. And this is a victory that's punctuated with a sober reminder that it's not just the actions that Donald Trump has taken to federalize our guard, to begin the process of militarizing American cities, to intimidate free expression and speech by utilizing ICE and Border Patrol in American cities. But he also announced today, right when polls were opening, that this election was rigged. That this election was rigged. Of course, those are familiar words. It's exactly what Donald Trump said after January 6th, that day of love, where he tried to light democracy on fire. He tried to wreck this country, and he called in to the Secretary of State in Georgia, calling up for 11,000, 12,000 votes, just like he called Greg Abbott, saying he's entitled to those 5 seats. He said this election was rigged, and he's moving to look for criminal prosecution and investigations at the Department of Justice. He is not screwing around. So tonight, I'm proud, but I'm very mindful and sober of the moment we are living in. Donald Trump does not believe in fair and free elections. period and full stop. This is not complicated, and it's self-evident to anyone paying attention. You start to stack up all of these actions that continue to this moment and will continue in moments to come. If you think I'm exaggerating, consider his announcement just a few weeks ago to send rapid response teams all across the United States, in all 50 states, tens of thousands of members of the military prepared for urban deployment. A preview of things to come. But back to this state. Our state of mind was resolute. Our state of mind was resolved to stand firm and to stand tall, to not be intimidated, to not be humiliated, to not fall prey to cynicism, to not fall prey to fear and the anxiety of someone that believes in only one thing, shock and awe, to intimidate and exhaust us. But we're seeing all across this country, 7 million people strong, standing up, not just for themselves, but for each other and for these enduring and historic principles of our founding fathers. And I'll end on that. Next year is the 250th anniversary of the best of Roman Republic, the best of Greek democracy. This fundamental notion of a system of checks and balances, of popular sovereignty, the rule of law. Mr. President, the rule of law, not the rule of dawn. And I hope it's dawning on people. The sobriety of this moment, what's at stake. Tonight, as I said, is an extraordinary moment for our party, but again, it's an extraordinary moment affirming those principles. Our founding fathers did not live and die to see the kind of vandalism to this republic and our democracy that Donald Trump is trying to perpetuate. And so my call tonight, in the spirit of Whitman, we talked about the powerful play goes on. We all must contribute a verse. And so we need the state of Virginia. We need the state of Maryland. We need our friends in New York and Illinois and Colorado. We need to see other states with the remarkable leaders that have been doing remarkable things meet this moment head on as well, to recognize what we're up against in 2026. And let me make this crystal clear. We can de facto end Donald Trump's presidency as we know it the minute Speaker Jeffries gets sworn in as Speaker of the House of Representatives. It is all on the line, a bright line in 2026. And so I want to thank everybody that stood up, not just for our democracy, but stood up for those that have feel bullied and intimidated, stood up for this notion of co-equal branches of government and a system of checks and balances. And I want to thank my wife, who reminds me every single day that this is about those that feel alone, those that feel isolated, those that feel an anxiety and a stress that they never could have imagined in their lives. This was about saying to them, we have your back, we see you, you matter, we care. And I'll just say this, I'm confident as we move forward into 2026 in this country, the best is yet to come. Thank you very much.
What's the lesson for other Democrats from tonight? Do you think President Trump will hear the message?
All right, CNN's Alex Michelson trying to get some questions in there for California Governor Gavin Newsom, giving a rather sober speech. One might even call it the first speech of the 2028 campaign. What did you think?
It was definitely more focused on 2026, which I guess is, in effect, if you do well in 2026, and he's a part of it, that sets him up for 2028. But the warnings that he gave, using what President Trump put on his Truth Social platform tonight, saying that the vote in California was unconstitutional, and weaving that into what we're hearing from other Democrats, what the Trump Justice Department is doing in making moves ahead of the 2026 election, that was very striking. I think we're going to hear a lot more about that.
And Casey, you've been texting with folks on the chain, your sources, about the Democratic message coming out of this night of victories coast to coast. We've covered the governor's race in New Jersey and in Virginia, the mayor's race in New York, the Prop 50 referendum in California. But it goes much, much deeper than that, down to the school board level. Democrats just winning all sorts of races.
Right, really broad and really deep. And as you mentioned, some of my sources agreed to do what we do on nights like this in public, right? Text each other and have a conversation about this. And I had asked a version of the question that you saw our Alex Michelson ask right there, which is what lessons should national Democrats take away from the campaign? And we'll kind of let it play out for you. But Liz Smith was one of the people who joined us. She, of course, is really a Democratic, she's like a dogfighter of a campaign operative, right? She worked for Andrew Cuomo, and she's been kind of touting Mamdani and his successes. And she says that Democrats have learned, or should take away, that one, people are sick of the status quo when they are force-fed subpar candidates and told to vote or else. And two, the Democrats need to meet voters where they are and talk about the things that keep them up at night, like how unaffordable life is on every level. And she went back and forth with Maria Comella, who is a Democratic operative in New Jersey, who has some other things to say. But I think that sets up the conversation we're going to have here well. I mean, the basic bottom line here, that candidates matter quite a bit, and it's not enough to just be against Donald Trump. You have to be for something, too.
And should we bring in Ken Martin, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, who joins us now? What do you think the message is? Because obviously we've gotten very different messages. You have Newsom, who is trying to present himself as something of a statesman, talking about people who feel alone and isolated. You had Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill running more moderate, centrist, suburban campaigns. And then you have Zohran Mamdani, a firebrand socialist, giving a very aspirational, bold and defiant speech.
Look, American voters sent a clear message tonight throughout the nation, right? They rejected the extremism of the Republican Party. They elected Democrats. And, you know, while people want to focus on the differences in this big tent party of ours, what's really clear is that there's a through line. When you think about Zohran Mamdani, Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill, and other Democrats who were successful on the ballot tonight, they focused on those kitchen table issues. They didn't focus on the gilded ballrooms and the marble, fixtures. What they focused in on was squarely an agenda that they ran for something. And I agree with my friend Liz Smith on this, which is, at the end of the day, what people want in this country right now is people who are going to stand up, fight for them and their families, give them a chance, give them an opportunity. And, you know, the reason we've been successful, right, not just tonight, it was a blue sweep, by the way. It was an amazing victory. Not just those two big governor's races. In Pennsylvania, we kept those 3 Supreme Court races. Of course, Prop 50 in California. In Maine, we defeated that constitutional amendment that would have infringed on people's voting rights. In Georgia, we won the first 2 statewide races, non-federal races, in over 20 years, right? We saw a huge swing with voters throughout this country. Young voters moved back to the Democratic Party in a big way. Independent voters broke on a 2-to-1 rate for Democrats across the board this evening. What this suggests right now is not just that we win on an anti-Trump message. We have to present something positive. We have to give them a sense of what we're fighting for and why. And I've been saying that. I said that in my race for chair. I've been saying that all year, which is why we've overperformed at a historic rate, 45 elections on the ballot since tonight. Before tonight, and we overperformed at a record rate, 16 percentage points on average. And you see the huge overperformance tonight. The Democratic Party is back. And the message to Republicans right now is you better figure it out, because the old playbook that you have running on all these cultural issues, no one gives a shit about that. What they care about right now is they care about the kitchen table issues. They care about the fact that they can't afford their rent. They can't afford their groceries. They're worried about health care. They're worried about how they're going to actually get ahead in life, and they want someone to stand up and fight.
Well, I hear what you're saying. That those are a lot of those issues are the reasons why Trump won last November.
Of course. And
right?
guess what?
The affordability issues.
You're right. And guess what? They did vote for him on that. And he lied to them. He hasn't done one thing since he was inaugurated to actually deliver on those promises. So there's no doubt that that anti-Trump sentiment is huge in this country right now. He's at an all-time low of 37%. But let's not take away from the candidate's positive message, whether it was Zohran Mamdani, Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill. They ran for something. They gave the American voters in their states, they gave them a value proposition. Vote for us, and here's what we would do to actually improve your lives. And that's the difference here. Now, we're going to keep calling out Donald Trump because clearly he hasn't delivered on those promises at all. All he cares about is the rich, the powerful, and the well-connected in this country. We're going to keep fighting for average, everyday working people.
So, Ken, what's the plan between now and Election Day 2026?
Keep winning. The plan
besides that, how do you do that?
The plan is to keep our foot on the gas, to not to take anything for granted, to get out there and do what we've been doing all year long. The DNC was the first committee out there doing direct voter contact, having conversations with voters, making sure we're engaging them earlier than ever before in a conversation around their hopes, their dreams, what type of communities they want, and then centering that in our messaging, making sure that we're reflecting what's happening in this country, in our agenda. And clearly across the country, people are rejecting the extremism of the Republican Party and embracing this new Democratic Party that's focused on their economic
Republicans are going to say that Democrats are leading with a socialist. What's your answer to that? I mean, Zohran Mamdani opened with a quote from Eugene V. Debs.
Look, they're going to call us socialists no matter who is in our party. I've said this all along. We are a big tent party. We have conservative Democrats, centrists, we have progressives, and we have leftists. We win elections through addition, not subtraction. We win by growing our coalition and bringing people in. And we need different faces and different candidates in different places and spaces around the country to win. Right? I'm going to reject this idea that there's one way or one stripe to be a Democrat. That's how we lose. When people say, well, you have to be this stripe of candidate. Now, the type of candidate that you need in New York is certainly much different than the type of Democrat you need in a Virginia or in a New Jersey. So I just reject the premise of that. It takes all of us, and that's why we're going to win, because this new Democratic Party is not going to push people out. We're going to invite people.
So you say new Democratic Party. And I can't help but notice that Governor-elect Sherrill is 53. And Governor-elect Spanberger is 46, and Mayor-elect Mamdani is 34. Your party, though, has a lot of people in it who just will not retire. They're in their 70s, they're in their 80s. There's a New York Magazine story about it right now, about all the members of the House and Senate in your party in particular who just won't retire. Is the age of your candidates that won tonight, Gavin Newsom's fairly young himself also, is that also part of what's going on here?
Look, it's not a question of age, because at the end of the day, what people want, right, is they want fighters. The divide right now in our party is not ideological, nor is it age. The divide right now is between those who are fighting and those who are sitting on the sidelines. I reject this idea. There's plenty of older elected officials and older candidates, frankly, who are fighting. And what Democrats want, and frankly what Americans want right now, is fighters. People are going to stand up and use the power they have to actually fight for their communities, fight for their families. That's the true divide right now. So I reject this ageism that's out there, right? There's plenty of young people who are elected to office who are doing nothing, right, with the power they have, just like there are plenty of older candidates and elected officials who are using the power they have to make a difference. So, look, I understand what you're saying. What people want is fighters, and we need more fighters in the Democratic Party, and you saw those fighters emerge tonight in races across the country.
Ken Martin, congratulations. Your party had quite a night.
We're back.
All right. A victorious night for Democrats, winning 2 governor's mansions, Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, Michael Sherrill in New Jersey, Zohran Mamdani securing a historic trailblazing victory in the New York City's mayor race, and a big win in California for Democrats who had voters approve a new U.S. House map. Our coverage continues with CNN's Abby Phillip in New York.
Good evening, I'm Abby Phillip here in New York City on a very consequential election night in America. Democrats have delivered a clean sweep of all of the key races in the first major test of President Trump's second term. Now, California Governor Gavin Newsom just capped the night moments ago, declaring victory in his redistricting ballot measure known as Prop 50. Now, this is the one that will effectively neutralize the Republican-favored congressional seats that Texas has drawn up. It has major consequences for the midterms. Meanwhile, here in New York City, a political earthquake took place. Zohran Mamdani continues to send shockwaves through the political system, and CNN has now projected that the 34-year-old Democratic Socialist will be the city's next mayor. Mamdani toppling former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. And in New Jersey, Democrat Mikey Sherrill outlasting a late push by Republican Jack Ciattarelli to become the state's next governor. This was the one race where Republicans thought that they may be able to pull an upset off, but they did not. And down in Virginia, Sherrill's former congressional roommate also winning the governor's race. CNN projects that Democrat Abigail Spanberger will make history as the first woman to serve as governor in that Commonwealth. All of the candidates tonight talked about the cost of living as the main issue that drove their campaigns, but also made it clear that they stand ready to oppose Donald Trump.
So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us. While we cast our ballots alone, we chose hope together. Hope over tyranny. Hope over big money and small ideas. Hope over despair.
We sent a message to the whole world that in 2025, Virginia chose pragmatism over partisanship. We chose our Commonwealth over chaos.
We're going to follow Lady Liberty's beacon. We're not going to give in to our darker impulses. Here in New Jersey, we know that this nation has not ever been, nor will it ever be, ruled by kings.
Now, as both parties take stock of these election results tonight, the shadow of the government shutdown looms large. As of this hour, it is now officially the longest shutdown in American history at 36 days. Much more on that later in the evening with my panel here. But first, we begin the night with the big night for Democrats in these races. Leading off our coverage is California Democratic Senator Adam Schiff. Senator Schiff, thank you for joining us. What is your read on what the moral of the story is here for Democrats? You've got some moderates winning in 2 states, and then you have a Democratic Socialist winning in New York City. What are Democrats to take away from that?
Well, first of all, great night for Democrats, east, west, north, south. And it's been a long time since I've been able to say that. But I think it's a couple things. I think, first and foremost, in the races involving candidates, we had good, strong, charismatic candidates who were challenging the status quo. And that makes a real difference. They were running positive campaigns based on an agenda of change that was designed to focus on bringing down costs, making sure we preserved health care, meeting the needs of their constituents, improving the economy. So they had a powerful, positive message. But it was also a referendum on Donald Trump. In California, for example, where there was no candidate on the ballot, it was simple proposition, that is, the redistricting measure in California. That was a clear repudiation of Donald Trump and his efforts to essentially try to lock in a deeply unpopular majority. So varying candidates, different political philosophies, all agents of change, offering something very positive, and at the same time, a rejection of Donald Trump, a rejection of the Republican regressive policies.
Speaking of Prop 50 in California, CNN is projecting that that proposition will pass, as you said. But voters also said in our exit poll that they prefer a nonpartisan commission to draw these district lines. So, I mean, would you support moving back to that process if other states disarm and stop redistricting efforts?
Oh, absolutely. And I think what Californians are saying is, look, our commission was popular. We supported having an independent commission draw the lines, but we're not going to unilaterally disarm. And in particular, if the president and Republicans try to do this rare mid-decade redistricting so that they can lock in their deeply unpopular majority, we're going to fight back. They poked the bear and the bear fought back. But what I hope comes out of this at the end of the day is a national redistricting reform that outlaws a gerrymander in every state. That's legislation that I've supported for years. Republicans have opposed for years. But maybe this is the impetus we all need to get that done. But I think Californians understood very much how our democracy was at risk through these partisan maneuvers by the president in Texas, and they weren't going to put up with it. And just seeing the kind of energy, the turnout in California, in New York, and elsewhere, there is a lot of energy. A lot of that is positive energy, and a lot of that is pushing back against Donald Trump and all the steps he's taken to diminish our democracy.
So we are now officially in the 36th day of this government shutdown. The election is over, but the Congress is still not working. Democrats and Republicans still not talking. At this point, I mean, now there's a Democratic governor in Virginia where a lot of people are being hurt by this shutdown. Are you comfortable continuing to hold out on reopening the government for even longer than this point? Do you think that that is the right strategy for Democrats if Republicans don't commit to changes on the ACA subsidies?
I think Democrats need to keep fighting to preserve access to health care. And right now, millions are about to be separated from their health care because they can't afford their policies, thanks to what Donald Trump and the Republicans have done. Those notices are going out. People are checking online to see what they're going to have to pay. For a great many millions of Americans, they're going to have to pay double. That's unsustainable. So I think Democrats need to continue to fight for health care and make sure that those costs are brought down. The president campaigned on bringing down costs. They've done nothing but skyrocket. The president on his social media tonight acknowledged that the shutdown is part of the reason Republicans are losing. And it makes sense. They're controlling everything. They control the White House, the House, the Senate. They've been unwilling to negotiate with Democrats. And so I think we need to hold firm, demand changes that make health care affordable for people. I want to see the government reopen, but I also want to see people be able to afford their insurance. And it shouldn't be too much to ask in the wealthiest country in the world that we be able to do both, that we have both a functioning government, but also that we have accessible health care for people.
All right, Senator Adam Schiff, thank you very much for joining us this late hour here on the East Coast. We appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. Back here in the studio with our panel, our contributors is Sed Herndon, Xochitl Hinojosa, Cher Michael Singleton, Scott Jennings, and Kate Bedingfield. Let's start on the politics of what happened tonight, because this has been a week of very bad news, Cher Michael, for President Trump in terms of what Americans think of the job that he's doing and the state of the economy, and then now these results. So if you're a Republican right now, what changes need to be made?
So I'm looking at this from two different perspectives. I'm not surprised by the results in New Jersey and Virginia. I think what's important for Republicans is to assess the actual turnout. I'm curious to see what the numbers look like with Hispanics, who 44% of voted for the president last year. I'm curious to see how black men voted, 21% that the president garnered last year. I'm also curious to see how a segment of younger voters who also outperformed for Republicans compared to our Democratic counterparts. Those numbers will tell a telltale sign in terms of what I think Republicans ought to do and what the focus should be. It's clear that the economy is still impacting a lot of people. There's just no doubt about that. I think we've done a pretty decent job on immigration for the most part, but the cost of living is something that I think a lot of people expect Republicans to address. And I think one of the reasons Mamdani had appeal in New York, while I vociferously disagree with everything he stands for, when he talks about free grocery stores, he's appealing to people who are struggling in this city to pay for groceries. I understand psychologically why that resonates. When he talks about free buses, I understand why people who are struggling to afford to get to work, why they say, okay, well, this seems to make a little bit of sense to me. Yeah. And when he talks about taxing the wealthy, again, I get the through line, but the question I think that conservatives have to remind people, how is this sustainable?
Yeah,
and it isn't.
There's definitely a lot of questions on the Mamdani piece of it, but I think the other part of what voters are saying is that it's not just that the economy is affecting them. They also think that Donald Trump's policies are hurting them. That's a problem for Republicans because Trump's not on the ballot, by the way. He can't use his own charisma to get past this. They're going to be duking it out on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that when it comes to Democrats, and Kate knows this very well, especially in the last administration, is Joe Biden tried to talk about the economy. He tried, but at the end of the day, voters were not feeling it. At the end of the day, they voted for Donald Trump because they wanted to lower costs. Now, it is voters that don't feel that and actually believe that they don't trust the Republican Party when it comes to costs, when it comes to lowering healthcare costs and overall costs of living. And so there aren't a lot of things that these three candidates have in common that we're talking about tonight, but the one thing that they do have in common is all of them are talking about the economy. And so regardless of what happens, if things do not get better for voters over the next year, I think a big question Republicans will need to ask themselves is it safe to be campaigning next to Donald Trump come next year ahead of the midterm elections? Because as of right now, it seems like it hurts
well, the lessons,
these candidates.
what I'm seeing from MAGA folks online is, oh, Republicans lost because they weren't close enough to Donald Trump. Scott, do you agree with that?
I mean, these are off-year elections in blue states, and I was expecting Democrats to win. I think a couple things can be true. Number one, it's easy to overread this. These are blue state elections. You had a proposition on the ballot in California that was supported by the Democrats. They run California. New York City is a liberal city. It's easy to overread this. At the same time, what Sochi said is true. How people feel about the economy will ultimately determine their happiness or unhappiness with the party in power. They were unhappy with the party in power in 2024. Republicans will face this in 2026. I will just point out, however, that the redistricting wars that California continued tonight are probably going to net out to Republican benefit. And if the Supreme Court tosses out Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, it may net out 12 to 19 more seats for the Republicans. So I'm holding my predictive fire until I see how the maps turn out. But I'm not going to freak out about blue states voting for Democrats.
That's very telling because it sounds like the strategy is don't fix any of the electoral political problems, just fix the maps. Is that right?
Well, no. What problems? I was not expecting Republicans to win. You're acting like I should be surprised. Democrats won Democrat states.
I mean, there are clearly problems, and I did want to address the whole blue state thing. I mean, Virginia is always a bellwether state. It had a Republican governor prior to this moment.
It's very unreliable as a bellwether.
And Donald Trump, I'm gonna give Donald Trump some credit where it's due. He brought both Virginia and New Jersey to a place that made Democrats extremely uncomfortable in the last election. So that's why we're looking very closely at these races, because these are places that Trump actually overperformed in the last election.
I respect Scott's attempt to level set on expectations. I see what
I was expecting to win?
I see what he's doing here. I
we were not expecting to win.
As a master of the craft, I respect what you're doing to level set here. But the reality is that in Virginia, New Jersey, there was dramatic overperformance. I mean, Cheryl winds up winning by double digits, Spanberger by, I think, 15. I mean, this was not Democrats kind of limping over the finish line in a purple state. You're looking at 63 House of Delegate seats in Virginia flipping. You've got two public commissioner seats in Georgia. Elected officials winning there statewide for the first time in 20 years. So there is a significant, I think, overperformance here of expectation, in part because Democrats ran really effective campaigns tying the pain that people are feeling in their day-to-day lives about the economy to Donald Trump, and voters really reacted. And so, yes, Republicans, I think, have to deal with that.
Off-year elections now favor Democrats. This is just a condition of the parties. Democrats now have more voters who reliably vote in non-presidential years than Republicans. And in blue states, you throw those two things together, it's a pretty good built-in advantage.
Just quickly, and that is true. Demographically, that is absolutely true. However, we are rolling into a midterm election where Democrats being successful in, for example, taking back the House will have a meaningful impact on Donald Trump's presidency moving forward. So yes, Democrats have historically, since the parties have kind of realigned around this question of higher education, Democrats have performed better in the midterms, but we're rolling into a midterm election.
I definitely think that the last point is an important one. Democrats have improved in off-year elections. I don't think it should be a surprise. But Republicans were thinking in the last couple of weeks that particularly New Jersey would be somewhere that would be closer than what we saw tonight.
I agree with that.
And I think that, specifically to the question of electability, this is a good point for Democrats to be able to show that they can pick candidates who can seize on Donald Trump's vulnerabilities. And I think Donald Trump has made the case himself to tie himself to the economy. Tariffs have done that for voters. It's transitioned the kind of sense of Joe Biden's economy to Donald Trump's economy. He's created a causation that voters are backlashing against. I think that's a through line between what we see today. When we think about Mamdani and what he did in New York, that feels to me more pointed about the Democratic Party itself. And so when we think about 2027 and the presidential primary, that's the question about what do Democrats believe amongst themselves, and that affirmative vision becomes important. But in the short term, Democrats have recruited candidates that can exploit the vulnerabilities among the electorate that Donald Trump has created because his economic policies are unpopular. That is 100% true.
But why do we keep saying this? Before the current governor of Virginia, a state I reside in, Glenn Youngkin, the last Republican to be elected was Bob McDonnell in 2009. Glenn Youngkin only won by 2 points in 2001. Only by 2 points, and luckily won because of the school choice issue. We barely won. So the fact that the state is going back to a Democrat is not a big surprise.
Hold on. Let's not have short political memories here, okay? I do think that the reason that we're talking about Virginia is because of Trump, because Trump put Virginia back in play for Republicans. This was supposed to be something that could have allowed Republicans to be back where they used to be before the string of Democratic governors,
where Virginia was
a purple state. Well, look, Donald Trump in 2024, as you know, brought Virginia to a place that was extremely nerve-wracking for Democrats. And I think that this is just a suggestion that that state is no longer going to move in that direction because Trump isn't on the ballot, A, and B, because now that Trump is president, his policies have disproportionately hurt the state. So, I mean, I guess my only point is that the idea that Virginia is this permanently blue state that's a fairly recent phenomenon. It is a purple state. It is still a swing state, and part of the reason it's a swing state is because of Trump.
I don't agree with that.
You should be actually. Trump made Virginia more of a battleground than it had been prior to. And I think that is actually to Trump's credit, but now it's moving in the other direction. And I think that that's just the nature.
I'm just simply saying the trends in the state have suggested for quite some time now that it's moving more towards a blue state and less than the purple state. That's all I'm simply saying.
Sandberger's win is bigger than the last few Democratic governors, too. So it's worth...
Well, candidates matter.
We also saw 5 million Republicans who did not vote as well.
And
so we have to incorporate that into the calculations.
Sears didn't run a great campaign.
She did not.
Let's just hit pause because we have a lot more to discuss. Everybody stand by. Up next, Mayor-elect of New York City, Zohran Mamdani, his message to Donald Trump and to Democrats. Stay with us. We'll discuss it when we come back.
I am young, despite my best efforts to grow older. I am Muslim. I am a democratic socialist. And most damning of all, I refuse to apologize for any of this.
Mayor-elect of New York City, Zohran Mamdani, delivering a fiery victory speech after pulling off one of the biggest upsets in New York political history. The 34-year-old is now the city's youngest mayor in a century and the first Muslim mayor. My panel is back with me. That speech was a little controversial. And I say that, I mean, if you were listening to our friends in the last hour, some disappointment that Mamdani didn't reach out to the other side, that he didn't tone things down. Instead, you've spent some time with him. What did you think?
I could see why they made that argument. I think tonally, I think some folks may be expecting the type of person he presented, particularly in the general election. I was following him at the time when he was making a real concerted outreach to the folks who are most skeptical of him and promising that his kind of ideological rigidity would not continue or would not be seen in office, promising he would not have litmus tests. And I believe he intends to follow through on that promises. But I think I saw in that speech is what he believes about his inside-out strategy. He thinks that his agenda does not happen if he goes into City Hall as a normal politician and asks people to just follow through in the same ways. He needs the public pressure to continue over the next couple years, and that's something he articulates, that he needs a kind of coalition who come out to kind of force the political establishment to do something they might be a little more uncomfortable with. I heard that in that speech.
Yeah.
I am asking my base to continue the pressure that we've started over the last year.
I have a hard time seeing how you run as an outsider change candidate and not insist on change, like radical change, because that's actually what he was elected on. So it's going to sound tough to the ears of the people who didn't vote for him, but that's what he won on.
I think the vulnerability here is how do you deliver on these promises?
Yeah.
When you have the top 1% and 2% of income earners in this city who pay more than half of the taxes, if there's a mass exodus of those individuals, your free buses, your free grocery stores, your free whatever you want to think of, it's not going to happen. And so at some point, once he's sworn in, he's going to have to govern. It sounds great to promise any and everything to everybody, but when you don't have the income to subsidize those promises, reality is going to hit into that base that you're talking about, and they're going to say, well, wait a minute here. This stuff isn't happening the way he promised, and that's going to be a real issue for him.
Well, if he doesn't deliver on what he promised the way that Trump has it, then he won't get reelected. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And I think that people in the last panel, obviously, and I agree with them in the sense that, yes, as a Democrat, you want to hear him reach more to the center, et cetera, but that's not how he ran. Everything he said in that speech is what he promised on the campaign trail. And it's very different than what Governor-elect Spanberger said in her speech, which she was very much saying, listen, whoever did not vote for me, I am the governor for all Virginians. I will work with anybody. But that's also the state of Virginia. And my guess is that Democrats running in the midterm elections will be running more like Governor-elect Spanberger than they are Mamdani. They'll be running on costs, but they will be running towards a more moderate electorate than New York City.
One of the other debates that he kind of has touched off is the generational issue in the Democratic Party. And I spoke to AOC earlier tonight, and I asked her what the Democratic Party should take away from Mamdani's victory, and here's what she said.
He had to not just defeat a Republican, he had to defeat a Republican and the old guard of the Democratic Party at the same time. He was fighting a war on two fronts and not just one. And he still won resoundingly. And I think the message that sends is that the Democratic Party cannot last much longer by denying the future, by trying to undercut our young, by trying to undercut a next generation of diverse and upcoming Democrats that have the parties, the actual party, the actual electorate and voter support.
Well, I think
Chuck Schumer is cooked. You can go ahead and say it.
Who cares about
Chuck
Chuck
Schumer is cooked.
Who cares?
Cooked.
Look, New York is one of the most liberal places in the country. AOC also represents New York. Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill, they also represent the future of the party. I mean, Democrats have to get back to a place where we are winning elections all across the country, not just in New York City. I think what Mamdani has done in bringing new energy into the Democratic Party is a good thing. I think that young people in New York City who are excited about him, who have not been excited about the Democratic Party over the last 5, 10 years, maybe even going back to Obama, although they're all young, so young that they weren't even of political age in the era of Obama. So I think that is a good thing. However, ultimately, the future of the Democratic Party is not just in New York City. It is in purple districts all across the country, and I think it's a false.
I don't.
I think
know
it's a
that
false
she was talking
divide.
about Mamdani as the future. I think she was talking about young people.
Yeah.
I think she was
Like
talking
her.
about. Well, yeah, no, yeah. That's well, yes.
Right?
I mean, I think she's talking about the gerontocracy and their unwillingness to leave the stage. That is what she was talking about.
And obviously, she has been rumored to be looking squarely at the Senate Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer. And, I mean, this was a terrible night for him because obviously the energy in his party in New York is with these radicals and not with him, and they're coming for these old guard Democrats. She's clearly going to take him out in 28. And let me tell you something else about Mamdani.
I think he might have bigger problems than Chuck Schumer when it comes to AOC, frankly. I mean, let me play what she said when I asked her about that, because I was thinking about you when I asked her this question.
Well, thank you.
Here's what she said.
Republicans are saying that Chuck Schumer is afraid of you. Is he?
I don't think so. I think that, Senator Schumer and I have worked together. I think Republicans are afraid of me. I'll tell you that much. And I think that they project their fear of me onto him. So I think that they're just telling on themselves when they say that.
All right. To be continued. We have a lot more ahead. I promise. We'll continue. We'll have another bite at this apple because again, when we talk about AOC, I'm not sure that the Senate is just where she has her eyes on. But next for us, what makes tonight different from Republicans' 2024 victory? Harry Enton is digging into the numbers for us. Harry, we will be right back with you. Democrats scoring big wins tonight, sweeping both key races for governor in Virginia and in New Jersey. Races many are describing as a referendum on Trump's first term in office. Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill both defeating their GOP opponents with commanding double-digit leads. But just 1 year ago, Kamala Harris carried those states by much slimmer margins, with Trump overperforming expectations. So let's get more from the only person he can get more from, CNN's chief data analyst, Harry Enton, at the Magic Wall. Harry, how did these Democrats manage to overperform in these two states compared to what Trump was doing on the ballot just a year ago? We were just talking about this earlier in the show.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm the only guy, but I'm the only guy with a wall, so I guess I'm the only guy, right? You're mentioning Virginia. Let's go to Virginia. We're talking about this 15-point margin going away here for Abigail Spanberger. I think there was like one pre-election poll that had the margin that big. I mean, a lot of folks talk about, the polls underestimate Republicans. Not in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're talking about they underestimated Abigail Spanberger. But, I heard that discussion that was going on. Virginia, purple state, maybe leaning blue. But we're talking about a 15-point margin here. Where were we last year? I mean, last year you saw Kamala Harris win, but only by 6 points. 15 points, that's a 9-point overperformance from what we had just a year ago in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Then, of course, we can jump up to the state of New Jersey, right? Okay, what are we talking about? A year ago in the presidential race, you saw it was a blue state. Kamala Harris won by 6 points, though. Compare that to what we had this time around. What are we talking about? We're talking about Mikey Sherrill going away by, look at this. This is a 13-point margin. Again, vastly overperforming expectations. So, yes, these are blue states, at least what we saw last year. But this year, they were far, far bluer. And I might just point out quickly in New Jersey, go to a place like Passaic. Look at that, Mikey Sherrill by 15 points. You go back a year ago, look at that. It was Donald Trump winning by 3 points, a heavily Hispanic county. Yeah. Jack Ciattarelli couldn't hold those gains.
So what has happened with Donald Trump in these states? I mean, because if this is a referendum on his performance as president, something dramatic must have changed.
Yeah, I mean, what happened? Let's talk about New Jersey first. Look at the exit poll here. Look at the opinion of Donald Trump. You don't have to be a mathematical genius. Look at that. The approval rating, 42%, disapproval, 55%. Looks a whole heck of a lot like what we see nationally, right? And then, of course, we can go to Virginia. What do we see in Virginia in the exit poll? Similar story, except even worse of a showing for Donald Trump. Approval rating 39, disapproval 58%. No wonder the Republicans really had no chance given what these numbers look like in terms of the approval, disapproval. We see very similar numbers nationally. We'll see if the results match it come the midterm 2026. And now it's only a year away, Abby.
Ooh. Time flies. Time flies.
I know,
Harry,
right?
stand by for us. Don't go anywhere.
I won't.
Democrats are sweeping key elections across the country tonight. Our live coverage continues right after this. Good evening. I'm Abby Phillip. It is 1 a.m. here in New York, 10 p.m. in California, and election night in America could have consequences for both parties and for the country. In New York, the capital of capitalism, will have a Democratic Socialist mayor for the first time in its 400-year history. And CNN projects that Zohran Mamdani will win the mayor's race in New York. This victory ends the attempted political comeback of ex-governor Andrew Cuomo. Mamdani will also be the first Muslim mayor of the city.
New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant.
His victory is part of a trio of triumphs for Democrats on the East Coast. In New Jersey, Democratic Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill beat Republican Jack Ciattarelli.
I raised my hand, and I swore to defend the Constitution. And that moment defines me. It taught me that leadership means carrying the weight of other people's hopes, standing firm when it's easier to bend, and always putting the common good above personal gain.
And joining her in making history, Virginia Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, who will become the first female governor in the Commonwealth's history.
We are built on the things we share, not the things that pull us apart. And I am proud that our campaign earned votes from Democrats, Republicans, independents, and everyone in between. That's the Virginia I know, that's the Virginia I love, and that's the Virginia I will have the honor of serving as your next governor.
And out west in California, voters are backing Prop 50, the congressional redistricting plan to negate gains made by redrawn maps in the state of Texas.
We need the state of Virginia. We need the state of Maryland. We need our friends in New York, in Illinois, in Colorado. We need to see other states with their remarkable leaders that have been doing remarkable things meet this moment head on as well, to recognize what we're up against in 2026.
Now, these results present new questions about the midterms and support for President Trump's agenda as the 36th day of the government shutdown drags on and becomes the longest in American history. We were well into a conversation about Mamdani earlier and about what he means for the future of both parties. And Scott, I mean, I know that you think that Republicans are going to be kind of doing rain dances about this going into 2026, but I also think that his victory was kind of a failure of the strategy to paint him as a socialist and have that be the only thing that worked to defeat him.
Well,
so what's going to be the real plan?
I don't know. I mean, look who he ran against. Cuomo, terrible. Ended his gubernatorial term in a terrible way, and he ran against the cat guy. I mean, who did he run against? Who was painting him as whatever? He didn't run against, in my opinion, like a legitimate, viable alternative. He got to run against Cuomo twice, for goodness sakes, and who's terrible.
I mean,
so,
he ran against Cuomo. He ran against Eric Adams.
There's a powerhouse.
Well, no, I mean, look, Eric Adams was the sitting mayor, and this was a pretty tough campaign. I mean, it got pretty nasty at the end. I guess, but really, I mean, are Republicans going to just scream socialism until the cows come home, or is there going to be more to the strategy?
It's a good question. I don't think Republicans are going to be the ones screaming it. I think it's going to be Democrats. They were screaming it tonight. Listen to Mamdani's speech. He's quoting socialist candidate for president. He's claiming, I'm a proud Democratic socialist. I'll never apologize for it. There are going to be some Democrats out there who look at this and say, look where the energy is in the party. We need to be more like Mamdani. And I know you guys referred to these other candidates as moderates earlier. I will just admit they're not moderates.
But Scott's right to a degree. Look at where the energy is.
Yes.
What is the lesson from the energy?
But energy is where Spanberger's winning by 15 points in Virginia. I mean, that's not. I don't want to interrupt you, so go ahead. But to suggest that there's only energy in the New York mayoral race when Democrats just had a romp in all of the races where they were running, including in states where, like I said earlier, in Georgia, where they're winning statewide races. So the idea that there's only energy in the mayoral race, it's just...
Well, I just want to talk about young voters really fast, because a lot of the conversation around Mamdani is that he was able to excite young voters. But he's not the only one exciting young voters. In Virginia, Abigail Spanberger won young voters 2-1. In New Jersey, she won it by 66%, I believe, to 32%. in the special elections that have happened in 2024 so far, Democrats have won 46 out of the 47 special elections. So there is more to this than just Mamdani. There is a clear rejection of the Republican Party's agenda across the board. And I will say, some people might say it is just Democratic states, et cetera. In elections before this, if you look at 2017, if you look at 2006 before that, if you look at the midterm elections after a Democratic sweep, Democrats always do well. And so there is something to say about these critical states and what that might look like moving forward and what the Republican strategy is going to be about trying to win back the voters that they won in 2024.
Look, on average, yes, Democrats are performing 15 points better than the vice president. I concede that point. But one can also not deny since World War II, the party of the president has lost on average 19 out of 21 midterms. Most of those losses were between 26 and 28 seats. And so there is historic precedent for Republicans potentially to lose. Now, I'm hoping this gerrymandering stuff in Texas and North Carolina and other places will work out for us. But the reality is,
I'm sorry, but it is amazing that all of a sudden it's like, we're going to lose, but I hope that we can just gerrymander the heck out of the country. That's a wild state of play. We learned it from our Democratic friends in Illinois. No, you didn't. No, we learned it from Illinois. No, you didn't. At least your Democratic friends in Illinois did it when they were supposed to do it.
So I guess that's a little
during
better.
This actual redistricting process. I'm not saying it's better, but I'm just saying that that part is unprecedented, and now we're just taking for granted that we're just going to redraw the maps because we don't like them.
That's right.
Just one point on the question of being able to paint Democrats as too far left, which Republicans have done successfully. I mean, it's the reason Donald Trump is in office, but those issues specifically, at least in my reporting, when I was talking to people, were almost always on kind of like cultural issues, right? This was almost always about trans women in sports, for example, or kind of backlash against DEI or wokeness or things like that. That's not really Zohran Mamdani. That's not really Bernie Sanders. That world is willing to have the fight about left, right, center because they think that puts them back on economic terms, which is a better place to be than the kind of cultural forward issues. The part of the Democratic Party that became most obsessed with representation, most clearly talking about identity politics, was not the left. The biggest part of that shift in 2020 was a center, more establishment part of the Democratic Party. And
the educated
yes, the college educated. And that's the part that Trump, that's the part that Trump backlashed against. So I'm saying, I would not say it's fair to put on Mamdani or Sanders just the party has gone too far left. And if they embrace that, that means Republicans get to win because their version of that is not exactly the same
as
the shift over the last
very important and very smart point because I do think that if the moral of the story is that he's so left-wing, it's never going to translate. I feel like that's kind of missing what happened here. Yeah. What he did was convince voters in that city that he was going to address the one thing that was the most important to them, which was their sense of economic stability and well-being. And it doesn't really matter what he called himself. That works. It works in New York. It works in Missouri. It works in California. It does work.
It worked in New Jersey. Mikey Sherrill promised to declare a state of emergency and address electricity costs.
When you make it about the voter and not about the candidate, when you make it about what you're delivering for the voter, those candidates do well, and that's what these candidates have done tonight.
But even Democrats have stated in their own autopsy that their concern is that their party has moved too far to the left when compared to the number of Americans who view the Republican Party as being too far to the right. They acknowledge that. Your party acknowledges that.
But I guess what I'm saying is that
you have to address that.
Is saying is that when we say left, right, the whole left-right thing, if what you're talking about is a lot of the cultural issues, that's not the frame of this sort of populist progressive left that is the Sanders, AOC, Mamdani wing of the party. They are not talking about those issues. And so if you
not as much. I'm not saying they don't.
I'm just saying but hold on, if you oversimplify it as like too far left, you might miss that if you don't make these other cultural issues the forefront of what the party's talking about, that the other part of the message might actually work for people. And I would argue, as I've said to you all in the past, that Donald Trump gets this. He gets it really well because he takes economic populism as a Republican and he does it. He literally snatches from Bernie Sanders' platform and executes as president. That's how I know that type of populism isn't just a left-wing thing.
Yeah, and I hear that argument. I think in the context of the results of tonight and looking into 2026, though, I think voters actually said he doesn't enact an economic agenda that solves our problems and makes us feel better. Like if I'm a Republican looking at the results tonight and my solution is we are going to run against the mayor of New York being a socialist, like that is not going to feel, to me, like the salience of that is not going to translate to people across the country who do not live in New York City, do not really care what's going on in New York City. And I'm not denying that Trump and Republicans have been effective at painting Democrats as leftist. I'm not arguing that it has not been an effective line of attack, but typically they're attacking, in 2024 they were attacking Kamala Harris, who was running for president. I don't think that the translation to an elected official who does not have jurisdiction or ties to these voters, I just don't think the salience is going to be there.
But it won't just be him. You will have Senate candidates. I mean, who do you think is going to win this primary up in Maine? Now that you've seen these, now that you've seen these primaries, now that you've seen Mamdani and you see where the energy is.
In New York City, which is not Maine.
I mean, he's very clearly a unique candidate for this particular city. I mean, if you listen to the speech, you hear it. But I do think that the biggest problem Democrats face, and I take your point about the dissatisfaction with how Trump is handling the economy, because even while there used to be a time when Democrats were pro-tariffs, they weren't pro-tariffing the entire world in a sledgehammer manner. And I think that has hurt Trump. And one of the things that he's tried to do to kind of inoculate himself from that is the healthcare thing. The healthcare thing is his way of trying to actually fix the economic approval rating problem that he has by trying to bring healthcare costs down. So I do still think for Democrats, they've got to figure out what is the message on the economic piece, and can they actually find candidates that can do it? Because the candidates also matter hugely, hugely.
Well, I think Democrats are going to attempt to model some aspects of Mamdani's pronouncements about economics. I think there are a lot of Democratic voters, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, who do feel disillusioned about their economic status. And I think there's a fundamental question for the American people. What economic model do you want to follow? A capitalist one, argued by Republicans, or one that's government controlled, argued by my Democratic friends, that just simply does not work? It stifles innovation. It stifles growth.
Yeah, I mean, there's an underrated part to me of this race. It's how Mamdani broke out in the primary early. And part of that is his willing to embrace that kind of pro-Palestinian advocacy. If I'm a Democrat who's thinking about 2027-8, that's an interesting question, because the party, and specifically Democrats, numbers-wise, have completely changed about support for Israel and about criticism. And it was not
the Republican Party too.
100%. And so I'm saying, so while it was a general election question of the controversy, it was a primary benefit for him and helped consolidate support. And so if you're thinking about ways you're making that coalition among the national party, you're going to have to wrestle with that. And I think Democrats have told themselves that voters only care domestically for too long. This is a changing electorate. It's increasingly born from outside of the United States. It's increasingly immigrant. And I'm like, those folks are changing the values of the party and the priorities of issues.
Stand by, everyone, because Harry Enton is still with us. Harry, tell us more about what the data is showing us about how Mamdani pulled this all off.
You know, I was listening to your panel discussion. I think one of the things I want to note, in Virginia and in New Jersey, the Democratic candidates outperformed their polling. In New York, it was the exact opposite. Look, Mamdani got to a majority of the vote, but only 50.4%, only a 9-point win, way less than what some of the pre-election polling was suggesting. And he did win 4 of the boroughs. But, the bottom line is it was fine. It was decent. But I think the thing that ultimately drove that victory, as we look at the exit poll data, is I want you to take a look here. I mean, what was the most important issue facing New Yorkers? Look at this. 56%, the clear majority said cost of living, which, of course, was what Mamdani ran on in the primary, what he ran on the general election. Donald Trump, of course, tries to come in at the last minute and wants to argue, crime, that's the big thing. But that was only 22% of the electorate. Now, how did those folks who felt about cost of living, who did they think could necessarily handle it? And what do we see here? If you said that cost of living was the most important issue facing New York City, look at this margin that Mamdani ran up against Andrew Cuomo. That is why he won this election. That, I think, is the thing that ties in New York, Virginia, and New Jersey, when you look at the polling, the economy was so high up on the list of issues, the costs of living, inflation, etc. And when you thought it was the economy, when you thought it was the cost of living, you went for the Democratic candidate. And that, in my opinion, is the reason that Zohran Mamdani is the mayor and not the disgraced governor, Andrew Cuomo.
So, Harry, Mamdani, you know, as we've just been discussing, he's a Democratic socialist. He made a lot of promises in this campaign. Did voters specifically expect him to actually carry those out?
Yeah, I think this is the key thing, right? You know, sort of the discussion of why did Mamdani end up winning. I think the argument's pretty clear. It's cost of living, and it is not necessarily his ideology on other issues. I mean, take a look here. New York City, Mamdani's policies are realistic or not realistic. Somehow the dude won, despite the fact that the plurality of voters said that his policies were not realistic, but they liked the idea that he was talking about costs of living and that he was speaking to them, even if they didn't think he could necessarily carry out everything that he was arguing about. And more than that, here's another little exit poll tidbit for you as I pull it up here. How about right here? Do you consider yourself a Democratic socialist? Look at this. The vast, vast majority of New York City voters that voted Mamdani in office, the same majority, but look at this. No comes in at 69%. Yes at 25%. I don't think that this is necessarily a New York City victory saying that democratic socialism is on the rise and is popular with the general populace. It may be popular with parts of the Democratic Party, but what we do see from the exit polling and what we do see from the results across the board is costs of living, costs of living, costs of living. If Democrats run on that in 2026 and going forward, they're going to do quite well. If they run on democratic socialism, I think what happened in New York will stay right here in, I will say, the finest city in the world.
Well, it is fascinating that his own voters think it's okay that his policies are not that realistic. Yeah, Harry, that's super interesting. Continue to stand by for us, if you will.
I'm not
Governor
going
Gavin
anywhere.
Newsom. He's taken a victory lap and throwing some jabs at Donald Trump in the process. Congressman Eric Swalwell is standing by live in California on that and much more. We'll be right back.
And let me make this crystal clear. We can de facto end Donald Trump's presidency as we know it the minute Speaker Jeffries gets sworn in as Speaker of the House of Representatives. It is all on the line, a bright line in 2026.
California Governor Gavin Newsom making it clear that he thinks the midterms are a referendum on President Trump as he declares victory in his redistricting gambit. CNN is projecting Prop 50 will pass, clearing the way for California to redraw its congressional districts after Texas did the same thing under Trump's orders. Now, with me is California Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell. Congressman, thanks for being here. Prop 50 passed by a pretty wide margin in California. But I also wonder, do you think that that's going to be enough? Because the Republicans have they've expanded their ambitions in terms of redistricting and could end up netting way more than what Texas did. Are Democrats actually going to be able to fight fire with fire in the places that they need to in order to counter that?
We have to. We just did tonight. It's a big statement that California made. And to your point, Donald Trump's not going to the ballot box at the midterms to argue that his big, brutal bill is helping anyone or that we're better served by disappearing hardworking immigrants in our community. He's just trying to make the math harder. And so what I hope other governors see in what Governor Newsom did, if you're in Maryland, New York, Illinois, and some of these other places, is that we can't fight these battles with one hand tied behind our back. And it's usually the upper hand as Democrats. And so if this is going, to be a midterm sweep, which we need it to be for the country, we need to all be in on what we do in the next couple weeks in these other states, because the clock's ticking, and we don't want to wake up the day after the midterms with democracy in ashes and say, well, at least we preserved the redistricting method that we had in our state. No, we need to match what they're doing in Texas, Illinois, or Texas, Florida, Indiana, Missouri. We need to match it everywhere we can.
I want to talk to you about the elections that we had in Virginia and New Jersey and also in New York. What is your take about the what the task is for the Democratic Party ahead. Can the party have both Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill, and Zohran Mamdani all at once?
Well, elections and governing is all about addition, not subtraction. And what I see that the through line in those three winners tonight is that they talked about affordability, that it costs too much in America right now under the Trump administration. It costs too much literally. We were promised costs would come down on day one. The president is 0 for 300 as costs continue to go up. And it costs too much figuratively as immigrant rights and rights for women to make decisions about their body are also being taken away. So if you run on an affordability message, if you tell the American people, we know you work hard and you bet on yourselves every day, so your country should bet on your job and wages going up, bet on your health care and costs coming down, bet on your kids' education and their safety in the classroom, and bet on their future, that's a winning message. It's a winning message in Manhattan, and it's a winning message in Manhattan Beach in California, and it's a winning message in every city in between.
One of the critiques of the Democratic Party in the last couple of years has been that they are too focused on culture war issues. You know, Republicans successfully tried to paint them as being for more for the rights of trans people than for bringing down the cost of living. And you can, I'm sure you would disagree with that characterization, but that is how they characterized it. But do you think that it is true that the Democratic Party, based on what we saw tonight, should put those other issues on the back burner in favor of things that are more speaking to people's pocketbooks?
It's all about affordability. And I say that as a father of 3 kids and a wife who works very hard in her job. I get, the challenges people face every day, to meet their bills at the end of the month. And that has to be our priority. And that's where we do best, particularly on health care, as we contrast ourselves with Republicans who want to take away your health care, charge you more for a pre-existing condition. And then to your point, about, some of the cultural issues, the way I see it is this. I'm going to go to the parade for the values that many of us care about. Many of our friends and neighbors are going to go to the parade, but we can't tell everyone who wants to be a part of our movement that parade attendance is mandatory. So it's very much a tone issue, and I think message has been received from most of my colleagues, and that's why we just had a big night, sweeping California, Virginia, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania especially important because that's a state that Donald Trump won just a year ago.
All right, Congressman Eric Swalwell, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Thanks, Abby.
And we've got a lot more to talk about on this election night as President Trump tries to blame the Republican losses on the government shutdown that is now the longest in American history. We'll be right back. President Trump's first reaction to a sweep of Democratic wins across the country tonight came on Truth Social, of course, citing unnamed pollsters with claims that the president not being on the ballot and the shutdown were the 2 reasons that Republicans lost elections tonight, while also reiterating his demands once again that Senate Republicans terminate the filibuster. It all comes amid an election night dominated by familiar countdown clocks. But this clock is ticking up to a level that we have never seen in American history. The government shutdown is officially breaking records for the longest shutdown ever, entering its 36th day and counting, a shutdown that is clearly on the president's mind tonight. The panel is back with me. Can I just say that Trump might be correct?
On the shut? Oh, absolutely.
That he was not on the ballot and the shutdown, and I'm not sure that he thinks that that's, it's not what he thinks it is. I think the fact that he was not on the ballot and that voters are blaming Republicans for the shutdown is bad news for Republicans.
Right. It definitely made a difference in Virginia. 5.6% of the residents there are federal workers. You got to account for the thousands who were probably fired. If you're a contractor, you're furloughed, you're not going to get back pay. You think about SNAP benefits, the government being shut down. I mean, those are going to have real implications. And if you're voting, you're thinking about that stuff in real time when you're going to the voting booth. So I think the president's correct.
Yeah, and sure, Michael, we're going to fix your mic while I get Scott Jennings on the record on this.
Yeah.
Look, I hear the point about Democrats just need to come to the table, all of that, right? But if voters are not blaming them and they are blaming Republicans, that seems like a practical political problem for Republicans. how are Republicans going to use leverage in their fight with Democrats when the Democrats are actually the ones with the upper hand in the eyes of voters?
Well, I'm sure Democrats will be more than happy to open the government now. The election's over. I mean, part of the reason they shut it down was to get through tonight.
I mean, I bet they'll be glad to open it up by the end of the week. Adam Schiff, he was like, hold the line. AOC,
there's lots of rumors
she
of
said,
people wanting
hold
to
the
open
line.
it.
Look, I don't see what is the incentive for Democrats to back down when voters are basically saying Trump's not doing enough, it's the Republicans' fault, and then they basically handed the keys in this past election to the Democrats. Where's the leverage?
Again, these are blue states electing Democrats, not a shock. Democrats clearly wanted this shutdown to get through Election Day. I do think they are facing pressure from their internal coalitions. The unions, the air traffic controllers, the government employee unions are desperate to get the government back open. They're feeling a little bit of internal heat. But again, the election's now over. I'm sure tomorrow morning phones will start ringing and it'll be open soon enough. This was a political shutdown, and that's what they did, and now we're through the election.
I think the Democrats' hand was strengthened tonight by the results, and Trump clearly thinks so too, apparently. But especially given the electoral success Democrats had, but also the fact that the elections really turned on this question about costs, the economy, prices, and so the argument that Democrats are making about healthcare, they've only been bolstered in their argument by the results tonight. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, there are real practical impacts of a shutdown on people across the country, and so Democrats and Republicans on the Hill are grappling with that. Eventually, at some point, the shutdown will come to an end. But I don't think that the election results tonight weaken the Democrats' hand here at all, actually.
Eric Erickson says on X tonight, lame duck status is going to come even faster now. Trump cannot turn out the vote unless he is on the ballot, and that is never happening again, at least if the Constitution has a say.
I mean, I definitely think if Donald Trump played by traditional political rules, all the signs are negative, right? Like, I think the through line, as folks have said about cost of living, and I think his own actions on tariffs, even on immigration, we've seen a kind of public opinion shift. Yeah. The recourse for Donald Trump is that he's not playing by these rules. He is trying to expand executive power to make Congress semi-irrelevant. He is trying to execute his agenda through kind of a use of federal authority in a different type of way. And so I guess, in my sense, the evidence that they received this evening is not going to slow them down from their attempts to kind of reshape the kind of fullness of their agenda, even if that means they lose some seats in the midterms. I think this is why the redistricting fight is very important, because it does provide an escape hatch from some of the electoral blowback.
I mean, he wants the filibuster to go away because he wants, as he's explained it on X, he basically wants the next year or so, maybe it'll be even less than that, maybe call it 8 months, for them to really just ram through everything they can possibly do. But looking at the polls, looking at the results tonight, that feels like something that the voters would respond to incredibly negatively and could mean even more disaster for Republicans going into the next midterm election.
I don't think, and Scott, I don't know what you think about this, and I'm curious because I've talked to folks on the Hill, and from my understanding, a lot of Republican senators aren't open to this idea because there's legitimate concerns about what happens when Democrats take control again and things are in the reverse. And then, again, you're also thinking about the political backlash. There's a number of Republican seats up for grabs in the Senate. I mean, there are a number of things that folks are assessing on our side to say, hey, Mr. President, we get it, but let us try to figure this out in a different way.
But it says something about how Trump sees politics, that he wants that not because it's good for his party, but because it's good for him. And that's the biggest problem for Republicans going forward, is that he doesn't really care how Republicans do in the midterms. He's like, I just want to get my agenda done. And I don't, that's effectively what he is saying.
He cares about more oversight. He's worried about the oversight. Yes. He's worried about not getting his agenda. He does not care about the seats.
His presidency will grind to a halt. They will impeach him. He knows the wages of having Democrats run Congress when you're the president. So I disagree. I think he deeply cares about it because he knows if Democrats win next November, either chamber, it comes to an end. I think they're doing everything they can do to win.
But he cares about for personal purposes.
Yeah, I think he cares about the midterms.
Doesn't every president? I mean, every president
they care
cares
about
whether
their
their presidency
They care
can
about their
advance or
party.
not.
He cares about the midterms. I would, to your point, I think he probably does not care about the post-Trump Republican Party. I think he cares intensely about the midterms, but I think the long-term, the impact that getting rid of the filibuster would have long-term on the Republican Party, I think Donald Trump's probably like, not my problem.
Well, and also just to what you said about how Republicans don't want this, Republicans also didn't want redistricting. They didn't want to open up in Texas and elsewhere this whole, everything that we're seeing, which is a race to the bottom on redistricting. And they privately, what I've heard from people is pushed back on the White House. But that's what Trump wanted, so they had to go through with it. So I am not sure that Republicans will push back on Trump's calls to end the filibuster. I mean, that just seems like if the president wants it, well, will they actually? But I'm not sure this Republican Party will do it.
I do think this might be the one thing that he's not going to get from them, and that's not saying much. But I do think that, first of all, I don't know that Trump really understands the consequences as well as others do. I mean, even Mike Johnson opposes getting rid of the filibuster, and he's been willing to do virtually everything that Trump wants him to do. So it might stop there, but we shall see. Everyone stand by. The battle at the polls was today, but in just a few hours from now, we'll see a battle at the Supreme Court as Trump's tariffs face their biggest test yet. That's next. We are now mere hours away from what's set to be a blockbuster case at the Supreme Court that'll decide whether or not President Trump's sweeping emergency tariffs are even legal. Tonight, the president says that the stakes of that case are high when it comes to his economic agenda. He posted this, quote, "Tomorrow's United States Supreme Court case is literally life or death for our country." Harry Enton is back at the Magic Wall. Harry, as Trump put it, life or death for the country. I wonder, how do Americans feel about that?
I'm not quite sure they necessarily think it's life or death for the country, but leave it to Trump to, Truth Social, whatever the heck he wants. But what I can tell you here is that Trump is losing the tariff argument with the American people. I mean, take a look here. New tariffs on imported goods. You go back a year ago, right? What do we see? When Trump was elected for the second time, it was 52% favored, 48% opposed. Jump over to this side of the screen. Hello, what do we see? We see the opposition jump way up through the roof. We're talking about 62%, more than 3 in 5 Americans now oppose new tariffs on other countries, compared to just 38% who favor them. I mean, we're talking about a 24-point gap here. It was a 4-point gap in favor, so that's a 28-point switcheroo on the margin. Now, the question is, Abby, why? Why did Americans turn against the tariffs? Well, it simply comes down to this. Trump is losing the argument. He is losing the argument when it comes to prices. Impact of tariffs on prices. Look at this. In the short term, 71% of Americans believe that tariffs increase prices in the short term. Look at this on the decrease. You can literally count it on your two hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Only 6% of Americans believe that tariffs, in fact, decrease prices in the short term. And even in the long term, which, of course, Trump has made the argument, it may hurt you in the short term, but in the long term, will help you out. But look at this. The majority, 51% of Americans, believe that, in fact, new tariffs will increase prices in the long term, compared to just 23% who say decrease. No wonder Trump is losing the tariff argument, Abby.
And where does he stand on this issue compared to some of the other key issues that voters care about?
Yeah, okay, so why don't we just look at Trump's net approval rating on the different issues? And I think this sort of gives the game away, right? Trump's net approval rating. We have a list of issues for you here. It's a lot of text, but it's crime, immigration, foreign policy, the economy, trade and tariffs. Look at what rates at the bottom here. A negative 18-point net approval rating for Donald Trump on trade and tariffs. When you combine that with the negative 16-point rating that he has in the economy, which, of course, was a big issue in the off-year elections this past evening, in New York, in New Jersey, in Virginia. You combine these two, all of a sudden Americans feel like Trump is not adding money to their pocketbooks. He's taken it out. Tariffs, not a winning issue for Donald Trump. We'll see if it's a winning issue for him at the Supreme Court, but I know which way Americans hope the Supreme Court rules, Abby.
All right, Harry, thank you very much. My panel is back with me. Donald Trump, once again, being the 2x4 president, where rather than just doing the thing in a moderate way, he just takes a 2x4 and just smacks everyone over the head with it. And that's kind of what's happening with tariffs. And putting aside, the Supreme Court's going to rule how they rule, but Americans have decided. They think this is bad for them. And Trump is not backing down, frankly.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of the issue is, if you look at the approval that Harry was just talking about, sort of flipping from when Trump took office. I mean, part of the reality of that is Trump was not describing tariffs accurately, right? Like it was always the companies are going to pay, we're going to make money off of this, and it was a hypothetical. People weren't feeling it. Well, fast forward, now people are feeling it, and so his inaccurate description of it doesn't land. It's that mismatch that's the same problem he has on the economy writ large, which we've talked about, which Biden had as well. That if you go out and tell people that the economy is humming and they're not feeling it, it's not going to land. And so there's a mismatch on how he's talking about tariffs, and it's dragging him down.
He also discounts the degree to which these days in this economy, everybody is a little bit of a mom and pop seller. People are on Etsy. They are engaging in commerce in ways that will make them be affected by tariffs. And I don't think Trump takes that into consideration either.
Let me tell you something. All this polling, all this punditry, he does not care. I have talked to him about this this year.
Trust me, I'm also aware that he does not understand how tariffs work.
I was just pulling up the transcript. I asked him right after it was the appeals court ruling happened. I said, "What are you prepared to do if this doesn't go your way?" I said, "I'm not even going to be thinking about that." He said, "If it'll be a disaster if we lose for our country will be weak, pathetic, and not rich." And then he attributed the peace deals that he has negotiated to tariffs. It is his longest held and most deeply held view that tariffs are not just an economic matter, but they are a tool of the presidency to achieve national security and national diplomacy. So we'll see what happens at the court. I'm just telling you my view is the polling he doesn't care about. He thinks it's working. The government has made money off of it, by the way. We have taken in a lot of revenue. But he will be apoplectic if this thing does not go his way.
But Americans aren't feeling what he said would be gains, to Kate's point. And I think that it's clear because now we're looking forward to the next year. We're looking forward to how Democrats are going to message the next year, and we know they're going to message it on cost of living and how we need to bring down prices and how Donald Trump hasn't done that. He wants to message on, not the economy, because you just saw those numbers that right there, he's doing terrible on the economy. He wants to message on crime and immigration. The problem here is Americans are clear what they want. They were clear tonight. They were clear 2024. Donald Trump's not giving that. He wants to go with crime and immigration. Let me tell you, when it comes to immigration, the exit polling from CNN shows in Virginia that when it came to immigration, Spamberger won more than 9 in 10 of people that cared about immigration, and half the electorate in Virginia cared about immigration. She also won independence. And so I think that on issues that even Donald Trump believes that he can win right now, he is not doing as well as he did in the 2024 election. And I think that'll be very telling in seeing what happens in the midterms.
Donald Trump succeeded in his diagnoses of problems that the American people agreed with, mainly being the economy. But even at the time, when he was saying how much he loved tariffs from the stage, I remember asking people after, well, what do you think about the whole tariffs thing? And they would just kind of wish it away. There was never agreement about the solutions. And I think we're seeing that kind of disconnect as we continue to go right now. But there's been a shift on several issues that I think add up to an American electorate that is increasingly not feeling the Trump sequel. And so he came in with a clear, I think there was a legitimate mandate about prices, about the economy. I think he has put the American people into his own ideological project. A vision about how he wants to change kind of country, culture broadly. That is not why he was elected, but that is his firm belief, which is, I think, what Scott is talking about. Whether he cares or not, he's going to go for it.
What I like to remind people is that he's been talking about this very much for decades. In the 80s, he was complaining that Japan was cleaning our clocks in trade. And guess what? He was wrong. Japan was not cleaning our clocks. We were cleaning their clocks. We are doing better as an economy, even in light of globalization. And so Trump has had this deeply held belief, but fundamentally, it is not accurate. He diagnoses the problem of what is going on in terms of, towns that have lost manufacturing, but his solution is not correct. And history and economics has shown that. So now the Supreme Court's going to have to decide whether this statute, which literally says that Congress has the power to tariff, allows him to tariff the entire world at insane levels. Yeah, it might ruin his day, But I think it also is going to address a really important constitutional line that Congress just doesn't even bother to address.
Look, I think you're right about the pronouncements of the president. I think you're also right that there was a mandate to address costs. I would advise the president to be more surgical. I agree with him on the focus being China. I think the best way to address that would be to build coalitions with some of our allies. I think the president is 100% correct on his focus about the refinement of rare earth minerals. We need to lessen the reliance on China. I believe 70% is exported from the Chinese, I believe. That's just not good national security strategy for us or any of our friends in the West. And so I think we can accomplish what the president wants to accomplish while still being targeted and addressing cost and the cost of living for everyday people by just being more surgical. And that's the best advice that I would give the president on this. We can still move forward with this, but let's do this in a very different operational way.
This is the same blowback on immigration, by the way. Like, I think the electorate response is that it has not been surgical. And I think the administration has done that on purpose.
It's not just violent criminal.
Yeah, and so I'm saying it's at odds with their kind of performative nature.
That's sort of like this ideological project that other people like Stephen Miller have about changing the way that we even view immigration in this country. And I think Trump shares a lot of that, but it's clearly being operationalized by other people in the administration. Thank you, everyone. Great conversation over the last couple of hours. Thank you very much for watching. Alex Michelson is going to pick up our night of coverage right after this.